Checked at the camera. I think it should be done.
Stand by.
Let's not forget to do that at the end. I mean, I can do it sitting right here.
And on 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hi, I'm Covert Bailey. You've seen me on PBS a lot, usually talking about whether you're fit or fat. Well, one of the things that's bothering me these days is I think government intrudes too much on my life. I hate the tax collector and giving away half of my income to the income tax. I'm sure you do too. But it seems like government is too big. And today I have a chance to talk with Harry Browne. Harry Browne's an old friend of mine, and he is running for president against Dole and Clinton. And I don't care if you're a devout Republican or a confirmed Democrat. I'm sure that there are times when you're sick and tired of some of the members of your own party. How about opening up your head and listening to some fresh ideas? All right? Let's talk with Harry Browne. Harry, one of the things you've done is you've written a great book, by the way, which I like very much. I bought almost 1,000 copies and sent them to and I'm not kidding. I bought 1,000 copies of your book. You wrote a book called Government Doesn't Work. You better explain that for people.
Well, government doesn't work. It doesn't deliver the mail on time. It doesn't educate our children properly. It doesn't keep the cities safe. Everything it promises to do turns out to be just the opposite. It's war on poverty has escalated poverty many times over. It's war on drugs has escalated drug use and increased crime in America. Everything it touches seems to turn to dust. And we are not going to change government, make it better, reform it, better manage it. What we have to do is to reduce it to the absolute minimum possible, make it as irrelevant to our lives as we can.
So, if I'm hearing you right, it's not let's improve government, let's get rid of it.
As much as we can, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And if we restore the Constitution of the United States and limit the government to the Constitution, that means letting it take care of national defense and the judiciary and a few other functions, but getting it completely out of welfare, education, housing, transportation, crime control, regulation, agriculture, healthcare, all of these areas that stuck its nose into over just the last 30 to 60 years and made such a mess of. And the reward for doing that is not just cleaning up America, but we won't need a federal income tax anymore, because that's what the income tax is going for, to pay for all of these things the government has stuck its nose into.
Good point, good point. And you've made a very, very interesting pitch to the American people. I'm sorry, I shouldn't use the word pitch, but why don't you do that again?
Well,
I like it.
It's a great offer, and I'm asking you, would you give up your favorite federal programs, whether you're getting a farm subsidy or a student loan, or maybe you just love the Corporation for Public Broadcasting? Would you give up your favorite federal programs if it meant you never had to pay income tax again? Because that's what the price is. If you want to continue these programs, you're going to have to continue paying income tax. But if you're willing to give them up, we don't need an income tax. We can finance national defense and the judiciary with just the level of tariffs and excise taxes that are already being collected by the federal government, so that then every dollar you make can be yours to spend, to save, to give away as you see fit.
Yeah, but Harry, I got a problem with the Social Security, just to pick out one thing. You say no income tax at all. How are we going to buy ourselves out of this Social Security mess we're involved in?
It is a mess, and of course no politician will talk about it, and that's why we need to have something that will get the federal government out of it completely, because as long as the government operates Social Security, there will be crises every few years, and they'll raise our taxes again and they'll take our benefits. And if you're an elderly person now depending on Social Security, I feel a great sympathy for you, because I know how you are feeling. You're afraid they're going to take your benefits away from you. You're afraid they're going to change the cost of living index or in some other way see to it that you don't get what you've been promised. And if you're a younger person, you see that 15% of your pay going out of your paycheck every week going down the drain, because you know Social Security isn't going to last as long as you do. So what I propose is that we take all the assets of the federal government that it shouldn't own in the first place, the western lands that it owns so many of, the power companies, pipelines, oil rights, mineral rights, commodity reserves, unused military bases like the Presidio. Sell these at auction, and with the first proceeds that come in, use them to liquidate Social Security by buying private lifetime annuities for everyone who's dependent on Social Security today, so that your parents and your grandparents will have a guaranteed contract with someone like Equitable or State Farm, who's never broken its promises, unlike the Congress of the United States, which changes its mind every year. And the rest of us will be free forever from that 15% Social Security tax.
If I understand it right, neither Dole nor Clinton has offered any specific way to get out of the Social Security nightmare.
Dole says, I saved Social Security in 1983.
What a joke.
Yeah,
Saved
with
it so it could get worse.
with a massive tax increase, and that's what he
Right.
has in mind for the future. Bill Clinton will propose a blue ribbon commission to make some recommendations that will not take effect until after he leaves office. This is the third rail of politics, and yet it is the most important, one of the most important issues in America today. We have to take care of it now, because if we don't, then the day is going to come when that Social Security isn't going to be there when you depended upon it, when Medicare isn't going to be there when you get sick, when banks are going to fail and there's going to be no money in the deposit insurance system. We have to head this off now. But if we do, the reward is a free country, a country in which every dollar you make is yours to control and to spend, to determine what you want to do with it, not what Bill Clinton or Bob Dole thinks is best for you.
And you're saying no tax. That's another thing that really ought, listen folks, this ought to trigger you. You know, everybody is saying, well, we're going to replace the income tax with a flat tax, or this tax, or that tax. But you'll notice that every candidate, except one right sitting here, always wants to replace the income tax with something else, some other kind of tax.
And that's because they are not proposing to reduce government. They are not taking anything away from the burden of big government that we face.
Right, they say they're going to reduce government. What they really are doing is reducing how fast it grows. So it's not
Absolutely.
actually reducing, it's just not growing as fast as they
Right.
say.
And what we're talking about is actually making government much smaller than it is today, so that it doesn't interfere with your business, so that it doesn't take money away from your paycheck, so that it doesn't regulate up the prices of the things that you buy and hold
Right.
down the wages that you earn, so that it is out of your life just as much as possible, and so that you make the decisions as to how you're going to control your life, how you're going to take care of your family, how you're going to bring about the things that you want in your life with your own money that you have earned.
Yeah, when I see 48% of my income going into, how many different taxes are there, for crying out loud?
Yes.
Oh,
48% of the national
half
income.
of what I earn, it just drives me crazy.
48.
We're going to pause here for a second, Joe.
How's your voice doing? You okay?
Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah, it's easy, isn't it?
Beg pardon?
Stand by.
Stand by.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to look right at you. I'm not going to start at the beginning again. That's getting boring.
Yeah.
I'm going to start right
No,
at
we've got that beginning down. We've got it on. So we can go on to other things. We are rolling. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Harry, let's establish a little bit about your candidacy. You're running for presidency from the Libertarian Party. Can you talk a little bit about the chances of the Libertarian Party?
We don't want him running from the Libertarian Party.
Okay, start over. Go, go, go. Are you rolling?
We are rolling.
Okay. Harry, let's talk a little bit about candidacy. You are the party. Harry, let's talk a little bit about your party. You're running for the presidency with the Libertarian Party. Talk a little bit about the strength of the Libertarian Party at this point. I'm sure people are wondering about that.
Yes, the party is 25 years old. It has faced ballot access laws and campaign finance laws that have been put in place by the Democrats and Republicans, but it's overcome that. And I will be on the ballot in all 50 states this year. We will have about 1,000 candidates running for federal, state, and local offices. We already have a couple of hundred in state and local offices around the country. But we will have a full-scale campaign, and I am in this to win the presidency. This is not a token candidacy.
Well, but people who are staunch Republicans or staunch Democrats are worried about throwing away their vote. We
Oh, of
had the
course.
Ross Perot issue.
Of course. The first question you have to ask yourself is, do you want smaller government? If you want smaller government, then obviously you would be wasting your vote if you cast it for somebody who you know is going to bring bigger government. And Ross Perot, Bob Dole, Bill Clinton, you know with any one of them at the end of 4 years, government's going to be a lot bigger than it is now. Only with Harry Browne, the Libertarian candidate, are you going to get much smaller government. But suppose I don't win. You aren't going to win with any of those candidates either, because you're not going to get what you want even if the person you vote for wins. But even if I don't win, you are going to establish the fact that you are on the side of smaller government, and they aren't going to be able to misinterpret your vote if you vote for me.
Good point, good point. So, even if, the chances are going to be tough, we got to be honest about this.
Oh, of course they are.
It's a long shot.
It's a long shot, but even if I only get a few % of the vote, we will have established a foothold. First of all, we will have told the other parties that you have someplace else to go, so they can no longer hand you lifetime politicians and say, here, choose the lesser of two evils. Not only that, we will lay the groundwork with whatever vote we get this year to elect libertarians to Congress in '98 and elect a libertarian president in the year 2000. We are going to change this country. We are going to get the free country back that the Founding Fathers handed us.
Harry,
but the question is, when is it going to happen?
Let's say you get it. You become president, and okay. You're not going to have a very compatible Congress.
That's absolutely right. They are going to fight me tooth and nail.
That's
but
what I'm worried
finally,
about.
we will have a small government president to fight that big government Congress. Somebody who will just say no over and over and over again. As they keep throwing these bills up to the president to sign, I will just say no. And if that brings government to a standstill, so much the better. And if we get to the end of the fiscal year and they say, look, if you don't sign a budget, we're going to have to shut down the government, I'll say hallelujah. And the first agency I close down won't be the Park Service. In order to get everybody upset, the first agency I close will be the IRS, and then let Congress figure out how they're going to raise the money to pay their salaries.
Can the president do that?
Well, that's what Bill Clinton did when they shut the government down because they didn't have a budget. He closed the Park Service in order to make everybody upset about the shutdown, to clamor to get the government back open again. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to shut down the IRS and then let the congressmen figure out how to finance the government.
Pretty scary stuff. What other things could you do as president, even though you had a very contrary Congress?
Well, there is so much a president can do without making government bigger, but making it smaller. First of all, I will go through the Federal Register and throw out all the regulations that former presidents have put there that run up the prices of the things we buy and hold down the...
I'm going to interrupt you. I think this is a good opportunity here, that question. What other things would you do? You start them by talking to Covert, and then I think it's a nice opportunity to come to the camera.
Okay.
Let's say that the long shot comes through and you make it. You're President Browne now. What are you going to do with such a probably contrary Congress?
Oh, they will fight me tooth and nail, but the fact is that I can use my veto and just say no over and over and over again to Congress and force them to bring government to a standstill. And if we get to the end of the fiscal year and we haven't arrived at a budget and they say we're going to have to shut down government, I'll say, great, let's go ahead and shut it down and let the American people have a break from big government for just as long as you want to wait until you pass my budget, not your budget. If we have a president who has the will and determination, there is so much he can do. On my first day in office, I can go through the Federal Register and tear up all the regulations that former presidents have put there that run up the prices of the things you buy and hold down the wages you earn. I can do something about crime by pardoning all the nonviolent criminals from the federal prisons in order to make room for the thugs, the murderers, the muggers, and the rapists who are terrorizing our streets but getting out on plea bargains and early releases in order to make room for pot smokers and other people who aren't a threat to society. There's so much a president can do if he has the determination to do it. But in my lifetime, we have not had a president who really wanted to reduce government to a fraction of its present size.
No, they usually make it bigger, I have to admit. Everything gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, what are you going to do about the military? Now, there's an issue. We've got soldiers running all over the world. Do you have a plan there, too?
Well, obviously, we have to bring the troops back to America. We have accomplished nothing by having troops in 76 countries around the world, by selling arms to almost 100 countries, by meddling in Nicaragua and Panama and Rwanda and Somalia and all these places. Government doesn't work, and government foreign policy doesn't work any better than the post office does. What we have to do is to come back to America and worry about defending America. If we're responsible for the defense of Europe, what are the Europeans responsible for?
Now, could you do that?
Of
And
course.
with a contrary Congress?
Of course, the president has the ability to deploy the troops wherever he thinks it is best to do. And the best place to have them is in the United States. And what we have to worry about is defending the United States. Find a way of defending against missiles that any two-bit dictator might want to lob into New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco. And then worry about all those rampaging Canadians coming running across the border from Ontario. But once we do that, we can defend this country far more effectively than we do now and at a fraction of the cost that we're spending now. Wasting money on the military doesn't do any more good than wasting money on the war on poverty. What we have to do is to get something back for the dollars we spend.
Now, the war on poverty.
Good. I want to continue. We're still rolling, Covert. Just give it a little more fire, because I think we may have pulled you back more than we wanted to.
No, you're probably having trouble thinking of where to go next. Huh? Yeah.
And we're rolling.
Well, the war on poverty is a good thing. You're going to have a hell of a fight there. You say we got to stop the war on poverty? I mean, that's almost like saying you don't care for poor people.
Oh, on the contrary, it is only we who care about the poor people. The politicians use them as pawns in great big political games that they play. You know, before the war on poverty started in the 1960s, we hardly ever used the word welfare in conversation, because welfare was some little department in the back of City Hall that took care of indigent people occasionally when they got down on their luck. But the real charity in America was taken care of by churches and service clubs and agencies like the United Way and Salvation Army. But when the war on poverty came along, it became a great big bureaucratic empire. And then the bureaucrats had a vested interest in keeping people on welfare all of their lives instead of getting them back into the workforce as fast as possible. And today we have millions of people who live in hopelessness and desperation, afraid that they could never make it on their own without the government's help. We've got to free these people. We've got to get them back into the economy.
Okay, but you've got this, let's say you have a woman and she's got 5 children and she's single. She needs help. She needs welfare. You're going to chop welfare?
Yes. When we repeal the income tax, we're going to put $1 trillion a year back in the economy. That's going to buy a job for anyone who can work and charity for anyone who can't. And that welfare mother is going to be the object of affection from employers who are going to try to find ways to satisfy the tremendous new demand for products and services that's going to arise from leaving $1 trillion a year in the economy. They're going to be looking for people like that to train them in their own homes, to learn how to operate a computer, to enter data, to telecommute from home if they don't want to put their children with a child care center. Because these people are going to be needed. There's going to be a fantastic shortage of labor in this country once we repeal the income tax and get these things out of the hands of the government.
So if I'm hearing you right, just by repealing the income tax, since it puts more money in my pocket, and by that I mean the individual, plus the corporate managers and so on, it allows them to expand and make more business opportunities. Is that what you're saying?
Of course, because we, with all this money, are now going to be spending more, we're going to be saving more, we're going to be giving more money away. And this means that businesses, companies are going to have to gear up with new products and services to satisfy this demand. And they're going to need people to do it. They're going to be hiring away from the government employee ranks. They're going to be hiring away from the ranks of welfare, trying to find people who can do these jobs. And in many cases, they're going to have to retrain them, but they will be retraining them for real work, producing real products and services that real people want to pay real money for, not make work retraining programs that the government always does, which always lead back to welfare in the end. The answer to the welfare problem is not to block grant it back to the states, not to have 2 years and you're out, not workfare instead of welfare, because welfare reforms don't work any better than any government program does. What we have to do is get the federal government completely out of welfare once and for all.
Okay, so we're seeing this mass of people in the workforce. We got the same thing with the military. If you're going to reduce, which I assume you meant when you say you're going to pull all military back to United States soil, presumably that would decrease the number of military,
Sure,
also the absolute quantity of soldiers.
But all the money
They're
that's
got to be looking for work.
all the money that's been paying to government employees, to military people, to the welfare people, this money didn't rain down on the federal government from heaven. It came from us. And the money is going to come back to us, and we're going to spend it on other things. on other things that the military people are going to find jobs doing, other things that welfare people will find jobs doing, other things that government employees will find jobs doing. The money will still be there in the economy, except that you will be controlling it instead of some politician deciding what's best to do with your money. I'll be controlling the money that I earn, and don't you think that you can spend your money far, far better than any politician can? Don't you think that you will make better, wiser decisions than somebody who has no accountability, somebody who is not even having to earn the money that he is going to spend and have under his control? Obviously, the people who earn the money should be spending it. Every dollar you make should be yours to spend, to save, to give away as you see fit, not as Bob Dole or Bill Clinton thinks is best for you.
We're going to take a break on that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Put it on teleprompter. I just read it off. No problem at all. Went like clockwork.
Where are we starting, gentlemen? Is it going to be Covert?
I was going to look at Harry and start with the question, Harry, let's talk about the Libertarian Party.
Fine.
Is his?
Five.
Wait just a second. Is his chair in the same place it was before?
Seems forward, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems like it's been pulled out a ways.
Yes, it is. Exactly.
Sir, if he'd just listened to us.
That'll teach you to hire somebody with a weird name. I wasn't talking about me. Ready? On 5, 4, 3, 2.
Harry, we should talk about the Libertarian Party, what it is, what it really stands for, and why you decided to be with the Libertarian Party.
Sure. The Libertarian Party was founded 25 years ago. It stands for
Pause, please, stop.
Just going to say, tell us about the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
And we're rolling with tape whenever you're ready.
Harry, can you tell us a little bit about the Libertarian Party itself?
Sure. The party was founded in 1971. It's now been in existence for 25 years. We'll be on the ballot in all 50 states this year. Could we start over again? Off in the wrong direction.
Keep rolling, keep rolling.
We're rolling.
Okay. Harry, can you tell us a little bit about the Libertarian Party itself?
Yes, it was founded in 1971. We faced tremendous ballot.
Gentlemen, even on your sound levels, everything seems to be a little down in terms of where we were picking it up from before. So
We're
just
speaking
trying to
softer.
the energy a little bit, and
Okay.
be able to match better what we were doing.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Why don't we talk about the Libertarian Party itself? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, the party was founded in 1971. It stands for individual liberty, personal responsibility, and freedom from government on all issues at all times. In other words, we don't say, here we think government's too big and we should cut it down, but over here we want to pass a law to make people do what we want them to do. No, we believe in less government on all issues at all times. Now, the party has had to face tremendous hurdles in the way of ballot access laws.
What's that? What does that mean? I'm
Ballot
sorry about
access-
my ignorance, but
Ballot access laws, the Republicans and Democrats in the state legislatures around the country pass laws that determine who can get on the ballot. And they say, well, you have to have 3% of the vote if you want to be on the ballot the next time. So we get 3% of the vote, and then they say, well, let's make it 5%. And they keep raising the ante in order to keep third parties off the ballot and not challenge the Republicans and Democrats. But we've been able to overcome that over the years. We've also had to fight the campaign finance laws. They tell us how we can raise the money. Nobody can contribute more than $1,000 and so on. And meanwhile, they take $60 million apiece from the federal treasury just as a subsidy to their own parties to run their own campaigns.
and the Libertarians are excluded from that for some.
We raise all the money that we spend voluntarily, and even if we were offered money from the federal treasury, we wouldn't take it. In the primary season, I qualified for federal matching funds, but I don't believe in federal welfare for individuals or corporations, and I certainly don't believe in it for politicians, so I'm the first presidential candidate in history to qualify for matching funds and refuse to take it.
Which is turning down how much money?
Well, it was about $500,000, I believe, something in that neighborhood, which would have gone a long way to buy a lot of television and radio ads and so on. But the fact is that government doesn't work, and we cannot expect it to finance campaigns without subverting them in one way or another, any more than we can expect it to administer welfare or housing or anything else without messing up those markets as well. The Libertarian Party, as I say, will be on the ballot in all 50 states this year, so you can vote for me wherever you are in this country. We'll have 1,000 candidates running for federal, state, and local offices, Congress, state houses, and so on. In addition to that, we already have about 200 office holders around the country in state and local offices. So it's a full-fledged party. This is not a one-man effort.
Wow. One would naturally think, why are you in fact, is there any hope that you will be in the debates, presidential debates?
We probably shouldn't get into that because by the time this airs, the debates will already be underway.
Okay, let's skip right over that. Is it a hard thing to be a part of the presidential debates, for example?
Well, we went a long way to try to get into those debates. 190 radio and television talk show hosts endorsed the idea that I should be in the presidential debates. People as diverse in their political views as Larry King or Oliver North, Mary Matlin, Hugh Downs, David Broder, journalists, newspapers like the Cleveland Plain Dealer and the Denver Post all said that Harry Browne should be in the presidential debates. But of course, that's not in the best interest of the Republicans and Democrats. Mm-hmm. But thanks to PBS, here we are being able to talk about these things on television across the country.
It seems fair to me. It's about time we listen to somebody else. Harry, I'm also concerned about the problems that deal with welfare. It seems to me that too many people out there are going to say, you take away welfare and I have no income, I have no way to support myself. How are we going to handle that?
Well, you know, we complain about the trillions of dollars that have been spent on welfare, but the real tragedy has been the millions of lives that have been consigned to hopelessness and desperation by the welfare laws. The welfare laws, the income tax laws, the minimum wage law, all kinds of regulations conspire to keep people locked in welfare for the rest of their lives. These people come to believe that they are completely dependent on the government, that they could not survive without the government, and all they have to hand on to their children as a legacy is the direction to the welfare office. There's nothing else that they have to give their children. We have to free these people.
Yeah, I agree with you, but they're hooked now. How do you make the transition?
The only way we will ever release them from that is by repealing the income tax, leaving $1 trillion a year in the economy that then can buy a job for everyone who can work and charity for everyone who can't work. There will be people who can't help themselves, but those people can be far better taken care of by churches or service clubs or agencies like the United Way as they once were before. People who will have an interest in seeing that they do get back on their feet and get into the job market, unlike federal bureaucrats whose whole interest is in building as large a welfare roll as possible in order to increase their own power and their own pay and their own status. We have to do something to free these people, and the only way we're going to do it is by ending the federal welfare system, not by reforming it. Any transition program that the government should undertake would undoubtedly lead to more people on welfare, more expense, just as the latest welfare reform bill will, and just as every reform bill before it did.
Wow. Well, it's a big transition. That's the part that worries me the most. If you are elected, you are going to be facing tremendous opposition, not to mention probably a hostile Congress.
Of course. But you see, this transition either has to be made this way or we just resign ourselves that for the rest of our lives we're going to watch government get bigger and bigger, because every program the politicians say is going to be the transition, that this is going to lead down the road in 5 years or 10 years to fewer people on welfare, to smaller government, and so on. Never turns out that way, does it? The Graham-Rudman bill was supposed to balance the budget. The tax increase of 1990 was supposed to balance the budget, and the deficit just kept getting larger and larger. Whatever it is they say they're going to do, if it's the government that's going to do it, we know it isn't going to turn out that way. The only thing we can do is to cold turkey get the government out of these things and leave it to people like you and me and everyone watching this broadcast to take care of their own lives and to use some of their money to help people who can't help themselves.
Wow. No more IRS, no more welfare.
Absolutely.
It has a nice ring.
Yeah, no more inner cities with people locked in them, preyed upon by drug dealers, preyed upon by a system that keeps them locked in welfare for the rest of their lives.
I'm getting a signal. I don't know what it means.
That's great. We were rolling out of tape. We're going to quickly change tape because that was just terrific.
One minute,
It
that's all right.
really had great energy.
Okay.